Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be checking out how the all-new M3 iMac handles emulation. And since my last video when M1 was released, we've actually got more support for emulators, and with the M3 chip, we've got a lot more power here also, so I suspect that we're going to see some great performance. Now, I've been doing some other testing on the M3 iMac here, and I gotta say, I mean, for being an ARM chip, this thing is definitely really powerful, especially on the single core side of things. This GPU does leave a little more to be desired, but it's not the highest end M3 that Apple offers. Remember, the iMac only comes with the M3 with an 8-core GPU or a 10-core GPU. The MacBooks are the ones coming with that M3 Pro and the M3 Max, with a lot more cores on CPU and GPU. But either way, this is what we've got to work with today, and we're going to be testing out some PS2, GameCube, Wii, Wii U, and even PS3 emulation on this system. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so here we are with the M3 iMac. This is configured with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and we've actually got the 10-core GPU as opposed to the 8-core GPU they also offer with the iMac. Now, of course, they have the M3 Pro and the M3 Max, which do have more cores on the CPU and GPU, but they only offer up to this in the iMac, and if I could have got this with the Max, I probably would have. First thing I wanted to show off were a couple benchmarks. First up, Geekbench 6 coming in with a really impressive 3,118, multi-core 11,918. We've only got 8 cores here. Would be nice to see multi a little higher, but one thing we really got to keep in mind here is this is an ARM chip. We're not working with an x86 chip, and this single core is outstanding. I mean, we're not at a super high clock here. I think this clocks out at up to like 4 gigahertz. Seeing single core in the 3000s is really amazing. Next thing I did was run the Geekbench 6 OpenCL benchmark on this GPU. We got a 30,463. Now this is coming ahead of the GTX 1060, kind of on par with the RX 570. And of course, those are older cards, but again, all of this is a single chip, not pulling much power at all. And when it comes to gaming on Mac OS, with a lot of games out there now and even emulators, we have access to a different backend known as Metal, which is highly optimized for these Apple chips. And in some cases, it can definitely way outperform Vulkan and especially OpenGL. Down here, I've got PS2, we're going to be using PCSX2, PS3 with RPCS3, Wii U, CEMU, Dolphin is going to be GameCube and Wii, and we've got OpenEMU, and this is actually really awesome. This is an all-in-one little emulation front end. Kind of already comes pre-configured. All you really need to do is drag and drop your games in here. So for instance, we'll do PSP. I think I got a couple games in here. Give it a second, import it, download our box art for us. Now another thing I really like about this is if we head up here to our settings, controls, use the drop down here, give us a little image of the controller. So for Nintendo 64, easily map all of our controls right here. Just a nice little clean interface for these emulators, and I think we go up to GameCube right now with OpenEMU. Also have obviously PSP, but there's quite a lot that we can do here. Now the main thing I was really interested in were some high-end emulators on the M3 chip. So for this, we're going to start out with the Dolphin emulator for some GameCube and Wii. Now I've already pre-configured this, and for my controller, I'm using an Xbox controller just connected over Bluetooth here to the Mac. From graphics, back end, we're going to be using Metal. Obviously, we're going to be using that Apple M3. And for enhancements, we're going to try 5K. So I think it's going to be able to handle it. And for this, we definitely need to test some harder to emulate games. So the first one here is going to be, let's do Automodelista, one of my favorites, then we'll just move along. Another thing we can do here with the Mac is get a nice little on-screen overlay. And this can be done from terminal, just gives us all the information we need. And once we go full screen with it, you'll see a little drop down, game mode. So this is built into the newest editions of Mac OS, and yeah, it kind of just prioritizes CPU and GPU performance to whatever game you have in full screen mode right now. So far, this M3 chip has been handling GameCube emulation like a champ, and you know, with this display here on the iMac, it definitely looks really good. We're at 5K right now, but this iMac is what, 4.5K? Still, you know, it's really hard to transfer over to a YouTube video. This is a super clean image with everything that I've tested so far. And even something like Rogue Squadron runs at 5K on the M3 iMac. If you're familiar with this game, you know how hard it can be to emulate on lower end systems, so it's really awesome to see this. And I also went through and tested F-Zero GX. It's buttery smooth at 5K, and I gotta admit, even the M1 chip handles GameCube and Wii really well, and it comes down to the Dolphin developers. They've done an absolutely amazing job, and when it comes down to it, this is definitely some of the best emulation that I've seen on a Mac so far, and you know, we've got that more powerful M3 chip, so I suspected it right off the bat. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at some PS2 emulation using PCSX2. And if I head over to settings, I'll just show you that we're going to try to run this at 4K. There's a chance we'll be able to do it, and we could probably go up a bit higher with some games. Metal back in. Rendering. We'll do 6X, which is 4K. And we'll get into it with one of my favorites here, Gran Turismo 4. Okay, Gran Turismo 4 at 4K, not a problem here with that metal back end. And I didn't go through and try OpenGL or even Vulkan because, you know, with this Mac here, we do have access to metal. This emulator does support it, so why not utilize it? And again, just like GameCube and Wii emulation, it looks so good on this built-in iMac display. I don't know if I've ever seen Gran Turismo 4 look so good, actually. I also went through and tested God of War 2 at 4K. Keep an eye on that FPS because you're not going to see a dip. I mean, we're right there at 60, even with all of these effects going on, lots of characters on screen. And of course, there are a lot of x86 chips out there and GPUs that can definitely handle PS2 at 4K, but seeing it run this well on an ARM chip is super impressive. Same with Wii U. Now I did run into a few issues here and there with a couple games that just wouldn't launch, or I could get to the menu and they'd shut right down. But one that actually ran pretty decently at 30 FPS was Breath of the Wild. Personally, I don't like testing them on screen. And I did try it at 60, but it's a little hard pressed to run at 60. We actually got around 51 with it, little choppy here and there. But I really do think that the M3 does have enough power to run most of these games at full speed. It's really going to come down to the emulator development. Here's Bayonetta 2 looking real good, and yeah, I really can't wait to see what these developers do with these more powerful Apple Silicon chips, because, I mean, you know, given the low power consumption of these units here, it could definitely make for an awesome little emulation machine. Especially if they bring this M3 chip to the Mac Mini. That would be really awesome, and I cannot wait to see that. And the final thing I want to take a look at is some PS3 emulation using RPCS3. Now, there are some games that are giving me some issues here with this M3. Like, let's get into Skate 3 and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Had some really weird stuff happening here with Skate 3, as you can see. And I did go through the settings. I tried everything that I could to get this to stop happening. But you can see it's just kind of contorted. Looked online. I didn't see anybody else posting anything like this from other systems. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but there's a good chance, I mean, we could get some really good speed out of Skate 3 on the M3. Because right now, the way it is, we've actually got some really playable games. Here's Ninja Gaiden Sigma. No, it's not the hardest one to run. Another one that actually ran really well was Tekken 6, and that's one that, you know, doesn't take too much with this PS3 emulator, but it's still great to see it working well. This is another one that runs super well, and you know, I'm going to chalk up that Skate 3 issue to the emulator itself, and I'm sure the developers will have that fixed in the next couple weeks. I did test it on M1, and I didn't have that issue, but that chip's just not powerful enough to run Skate 3 at full speed, but I really do think that the M3 is. So overall, we're actually seeing some really great emulation performance out of this new iMac with that M3 chip. And if I can get my hands on a MacBook Pro with the M3 Pro or the M3 Max, I will be doing some testing. And I'm not saying run out and buy a Mac specifically for emulation. I would definitely be against that. But if you do have a Mac, you use it for work, you use it for school, just note that these new M3s can definitely handle emulation. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. If there's anything else you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. One thing I'd love to do is make a video showing off some gaming here, because we do have access to quite a few games on Steam and the App Store. So if you're interested in seeing that, let me know in the comments. But that's it for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.